Everyone. Hello. Got a few people still joining, but for everyone that's here, I think let's get going. Do some intros first, and then that will let the stragglers come on in. So, thanks so much for joining. First of all, just some intros. So, myself, I'm the director for Enforcer ANZ, based out of Melbourne. First came across SMB1001. We ran a Microsoft event earlier this year in Sydney, and a lot of partners were coming up to us asking about this framework. And naturally, the more partners that are asking for us to build baselines to align their 365 environments to a certain framework, the more likely we are to investigate it. So we had Nathan, who's our head of cloud enablement, have a reach out, try and understand actually what is this framework, and then a person by the name of James Davis, who a lot of you are probably familiar with, he introduced us to Ryan from CyberCert, and he really helped us along in building out the standards and understanding what the SMB 1001 is and how we can help partners align their 365 environments to that framework. And then we thought, well, why don't we run a webinar, because we're getting more and more interest in this space, and that brings us here. So Ryan, I'll let you do a quick intro to yourself.
Amazing. Thanks, Raoul. Good, nice intro. And yes, good to be here and good to see plenty of people on the call. I'm keen to get the questions and answers happening. So Ryan Ettridge, co-founder and CEO of CyberCert, almost 21 years in cybersecurity, with the first 18 years of that in enterprise cybersecurity. Unfortunately, apologies, contributing to some of the standards that exist in regulation and legislation. As a PwC partner for 7 years and techie background. And really, I jumped into the SMB space a couple of years ago and noted very quickly that whatever was developed for enterprise actually isn't working for small businesses. A, because they don't have the desire to be cyber experts, they don't have the resources, the budget. And so really the approach has to change, and that's the power of SMB 1001 and the certification that goes along with it, which is 100% community powered. So pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A. Thanks, Raoul.
Brilliant. And Nathan?
Yeah, thanks, Raoul. So I'm the head of cloud enablement for Australia and New Zealand for Enforcer. My background's very much in the MSP space. I worked for a couple of different MSPs and ended up as a solutions architect before moving into Enforcer and making the jump into vendor land. Very much keen on cybersecurity, know Essential 8 inside out and back to front, and a lot of the other frameworks that have enjoyed getting to know SMB 1001, and hopefully I can help make SMB 1001 adoption a lot easier for you.
Brilliant. There's only like 3 or 4 slides, so really it's the agenda is a lot of an open Q&A with Ryan on the fundamentals of the framework. Like, what is it? Why should an MSP consider it? And how can you use it to differentiate your services? Then we'll bring Nathan into it around like how to standardize and protect your customers' 365 environments. There's a little live demo in there as well. And then we'll leave time for Q&A, but for everyone, a bit of housekeeping. There's a chat and Q&A in this Teams webinar, so it's always better when it's a bit more interactive. So don't be shy. Fire questions away as you go, and we'll try and get to them as and when they come up. There will also, the first question usually is also, will there be a recording? Yes, there'll be a post-webinar summary where we'll send the recording through as well. Okay, let's get into it. So, Ryan, why was the SMB 1001 developed, and what makes it different from all the other cybersecurity standards out there?
Yes, so SMB 1001 specifically designed for the SMB, and the SMB is not a one-size-fits-all. There's an S, there's an M in the SMB, and there's lots of different S's and lots of different M's. And so really the definition ranges from the sole trader that has an ABN in Australia, NZBN, etc., and they turn over revenue. And so that can be the sole trader, the hairdresser, the very low risk, low digital maturity business, through to 200 seats, 250 seats, $100 million turnover, medium-sized business. And across the range of that, in Australia, for example, of the 2.5 million small businesses that are registered, about 1 million of them turnover revenue. So there's 1 million small businesses of the addressable market in Australia alone, and there needs to be a standard and a model that actually allows the small businesses to find a fit for purpose list of cyber capabilities that suits them, proportionate to their risk profile, their the industry, the sector that they work in, and so on. So SMB 1001 has 5 tiers in it, tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they translate to CyberCert, which is the certification body against the standard, to bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and diamond. Now, small businesses are not cyber experts. It's not their job, it's not their intention, it's not their desire to become cyber security experts. It's like if they were to operate a washing machine. They are the operators of the washing machine. They're not the technicians of the washing machine. But yes, they have a responsibility to know how to use the washing machine, but it is not their responsibility necessarily to know how to fix the washing machine or make sure, even build the washing machine in the first place. So SMB 1001, requirement number 1 at all of the levels is that you must have someone who can spell cyber. You must have someone who is the technical support specialist who can help you build, implement, and verify that the cyber controls are doing what they're supposed to be doing to the standard, and only then will CyberCert issue the certification to the small business. The first 3 levels are company director attested, so self-attested, but a legal instrument that says, yes, hand on heart, as a legal instrument, we have done the 6 controls in bronze, 14 in silver, 23 in gold, and so on. And so if you can think about the role of the standard and certification is to remove subjectivity, because across the range of SMBs, there are, of course, thousands of MSPs, depending on who you talk to, 9,000 across Australia and New Zealand, that also have a maturity of readiness and cybersecurity expertise. And if you talk to one expert versus another, there's a little bit of subjectivity. I prefer this blue one. I prefer the firewall first. I prefer the awareness training first. And so the standard, with 20 experts that represent cybersecurity and SMBs on the steering committee of DSI, the standards body, their job is to set the rules. To say, we know at bronze, the 6 fundamental controls will shut the front door to the most common cyber threats to SMBs. We know at silver, it's the 14 controls that are the most common cyber insurance underwriting criteria, for example. At gold, the 23 controls are the most common and effective controls that will help a small business demonstrate compliance to the most common compliance criteria in privacy and reasonable steps, and so on. So what it does is it removes subjectivity away from the what do I need to do? It defines the program of work for the MSPs to help the SMBs, and then certification shows to the SMB that the standard has been met. So it is a demonstrable way that the SMB can know that it's being done, but doesn't need to know how it's being done.
Okay, and I think you've somewhat answered my next question, but just to be clear, so many partners that we speak to might be launching a new compliance service, let's say, and they're trying to decide what to align their customers to. Now, if someone was to put that question to you, like, why would you pick SMB 1001 and not something like the Essential 8, for instance? What would you say?
Yeah. Yes. So Essential 8 was never designed for the small business at the center. It was designed for government agencies and typically with a Windows-based environment. But it has been the de facto for small businesses because there hasn't been anything else until SMB 1001. However, if there is a contractual mandate that still requires an SMB to meet the Essential 8 as part of DISP or some other government agency requirement, then SMB 1001 isn't going to replace that. It is up to the receiving agency, the enterprise, the government, and so on, to actually recognize SMB 1001 certification, and more are doing it. But until that happens, Essential 8, for example, is a contractual mandate that SMBs actually need to follow. So rule number 1, if there is a contractual mandate for something else, thou shalt do that until the recipient has actually accepted something else. That's the first rule. The second rule is when you get a little bit more larger and sophisticated and complex than 200, 300, 400 seats, often there are multiple risk profiles. Marketing, technology, finance, sales, executive committee. That's what ISO is designed for. It's a risk-based risk management system. You certify the management system and you have the skills within that size organization usually to be able to assess the risk, accept the risk, treat the risk, and so on. Below that, however, and this is like the everything else, if you can imagine those standards that I love, by the way, I used to do ISO for many, many years. SMB 1001 is the sand in the jar that surrounds all the other mandates. It fills the gaps. It can act as the bridge towards those for some of the businesses that are moving towards a larger and more complex environment. But for all of those that don't have a contractual mandate and are not enterprises, SMB 1001 often fills the gap, and if they are moving, can provide the pathway to other standards and even alignments. If you go onto the DSI website, there's a standards mapping section under the menu item now, which shows you how SMB 1001 5 different levels map to Essential 8, the different maturity levels in Essential 8, CIS, CMMC, Singapore, and so on. So that's how I would position it, Ral. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's say you've convinced me. I run an MSP. Like, what's the process? How do I get certified? How do I get my customers certified?
Awesome. So certification, let's say SMB 1001 defines the requirements to get to each of the levels. To be able to guide your clients to certification readiness, because only CyberCert issues them, the MSP doesn't issue the certification, you just guide them to readiness. You sign up at partners.cybercert.ai/MSP. Doesn't cost you anything to sign up. Follow the bouncing ball. All of the resources are inside the dashboard then once the MSP signs up. So that is the toolkits, the branding resources, even to help you market. The Academy, what we call CyberCert Learn, 8 modules in there to help you explain the difference between CyberCert and DSI, even the standards body versus the certification body, how SMB 1001 differs from the other standards. So all of that is actually provided to our partners at no cost. You join and you get started, because our main job is to certify the SMB, powered by the partners. The only ask is that you certify yourself, MSP, to at least the level you want to guide your clients to. You don't want to be the weakest link in the supply chain, and we recommend strongly that it's aim for gold as an MSP, because you've got multiple clients. Gold has instant response and a bunch of other things that show that you are ready for a breach, essentially. And then a more hardened and qualified MSP will definitely want to move through to Platinum and Diamond, because that's a independently verified level. We have BSI and Assuredly as our 2 external auditors that come in and audit environments at Platinum and Diamond. So partners.cybercert.ai to sign up for $0. And inside there's a bunch of other offers and promos and whatever else to get you started, including how to structure your service offering, where Enforcer fits into that. If there's 23 controls and you've got a 365 environment, how does Enforcer help me do that? It gives you the baseline to then have the conversation with the likes of you guys.
Okay. So let's say you've decided, okay, SMB 1001 is the way to go. We share quite a lot of partners. So can you give some examples of how MSPs, in terms of opening up new revenue streams, or using this as a competitive differentiator? You know, what have you seen? What's worked?
Yes. We have heaps of examples. So we've got just under 400 partners now, something like that, across Australia, New Zealand, US, UK, Canada. Part of the challenge for MSPs and even technology partners to date has been this competition of, why would I pick X vendor over Y? Tell me why I need backups. Tell me, even though like there is still that question, we know that. So what certification does is it removes the subjectivity, not just away from the outcome, but actually the conversation. There's an international steering committee. There's an international standard that says the 6 fundamental controls, if you have an internet connection, are these. And so it really becomes removing this question about why I ought to do this stuff, right? The second thing is one of the outcomes and one of the opportunities that open up with certification of better insurance, cyber insurance premiums, business and liability insurance. So we have 20 insurance partners around that recognizing certification, and they don't ask any more technical questions. CyberCert even captures the contextual questions. We send through that. If you want to connect with the insurer, we make nothing off the insurance policies. The only money and revenue CyberCert sees is through certification. So it's up to you to engage with any of the collaborations that we make available to you as partners and SMBs. But we facilitate the connection. So silver and above, silver being the most common underwriting criteria, makes it really easy to get a fit for purpose cyber insurance policy. Now we know on average, it's even increased with the last threat report from federal government. It's at least $50,000 average cost per breach. If you can get that financial risk insured, and it's actually more than that by the time you take into account the lost revenue, the time it takes to rebuild connections and sales processes, and even there might be a psychological harm in that, then cyber insurance at least covers the financial downside of those breaches. And if you can get a fit-for-purpose policy at silver, then that becomes a really easy conversation to have with a small business. There's about 160, 170,000 small businesses of the million in Australia, if I just talk about AU, that turn over $3 million or more, right? And so that means they have a ransomware reporting obligation. They have a notifiable data breach obligation. All of them have a Corporations Act obligation to demonstrate reasonable steps that they've actually met the obligations as a company director. CyberCert is that. We have endorsements and recognitions from law societies and law councils and enterprises for supply chains and others to show that CyberCert demonstrates reasonable steps for some of those companies. It's not the safe harbor, it doesn't get them out of jail, but it shows that they haven't been negligent through that process. So it shortens the sales conversation. You're not talking about widgets and colors and flavors and so on. You're talking about the specific outcomes that certified cybersecurity actually provides to them. So it's the sales conversation. The second thing is it removes the subjectivity away from the programs of work. So if you've got a silver, it's already predefined for you. Just go and do it. Pick your architecture and your stack that's going to suit the SMB most appropriately. 23 in gold, get them to gold, and you might even use that as the gap analysis that says, hey, you're 4 controls away from getting a gold certification. If we just do the incident response and the fraud policy and the confidentiality agreement, the tech stack's already there. We can actually give you gold certification that gives you this cool badge that you can put on your website and actually show that you've taken the reasonable steps and given your stakeholders confidence. So removes the subjectivity away from the conversation, predefines the program of work, and with the help and alignment of the likes of Enforcer, the stacks are pre-mapped. The stacks are pre-mapped for the MSPs. It's like, hey, you don't have to use this stuff, but by the way, here's some proven stacks that actually help you roll out SMB1001 certification programs at work.
Brilliant. And within that, are there any industries or types of businesses where they would be more receptive to the SMB1001 in terms of when the MSPs would go to like let's say a law firm? Would they be more aware of this framework? Like where have you seen the most success?
Yeah, of the thousands that are moving through it now, professional services generally, I would say, have picked this up the most. Even healthcare. So health, professional services, so accountants, law firms, for sure law firms. Why? Because the likes of Queensland Law Society and some others, I had a session yesterday with the LPLC, have demonstrated that this is actually a really helpful pathway. Now, people go to the lawyers for advice when the proverbial hits the fan. And so, yes, the law firms have grabbed this with confidence, which is both humbling but also powerful show of leadership from that industry to know that this is actually a helpful pathway. So professional services, but we have golf clubs, we have shooting associations, we have schools, councils, kindergartens. Who else have we got in that mix? Manufacturing for sure, retail, and a bunch of others. So they're just the small businesses that are adopting it. But here's the thing: it's who they serve that really helps them close the decision about whether or not they do it. So the enterprises for their supply chains, the more they recognize it, the easier it becomes on the SMB. For example, you certify once and show to many. You can look up the certification at verify.cybercert.ai. It's the public registry of certified entities. And so that, again, gives them confidence that it's like, you don't need to answer the 400-page subjective questionnaires in the supply chain, just show us your cert. So more and more we get to add the logos that are recognizing this on behalf of making it easier for SMBs and therefore giving MSPs a really clear pathway. So,
nice. By the way, we've got our first question. Thanks, Chris. Where can he find the mapping documents on the DSI website to the other frameworks you mentioned?
Yeah, can I chuck that in the chat?
Please do. I've seen it. It's pretty good. And then you showed us the changes for 2026 look quite extensive. Can you talk us through, like, what are in your mind, the key changes to the standard coming up? You know, what are you most excited about there? And also, how does that affect partners that are already in the process of obtaining certification?
Yeah, nice. So what happens with the steering committee? So again, I'm CyberCert, the CEO of CyberCert, certification body, not the standards body. DSI, Dynamic Standards International, is the standards body. The DSI steering committee, their job is to work through the feedback and requests and essentially the continuous improvement. The D in DSI is dynamic. That means it updates annually. Right? I didn't say that before. So throughout the year, the feedback from the partners and the SMBs and the steering committee is that, okay, this control, albeit not brand new, 12 months, 24, 36 months old, is now actually fit for purpose and accessible for small businesses in Vanuatu, noting that this is an international standard based on the most common cyber threats to SMBs worldwide. So if it works for the hairdresser, then it's okay to be recommended at a particular level. It's okay to be recommended at bronze. So that's some of the thinking that goes through the steering committee, for which I don't have a vote, by the way. That would be a conflict of interest. So one of the movements at bronze is that the basic and introductory awareness training is now available at bronze. So that means there's a whole bunch of awareness training programs out there for SMBs, but now for a small business to get a bronze certification, they must have done that, as well as the other 5 and 6 controls that are in there. Silver introduces email security specifically now. So that wasn't necessarily specifically called out, but because the feedback was it needs to be explicit, that's now called out at level 2. So that's one of the main changes that have come in at Silver. Silver still needs to be accessible to the majority of the SMBs that aren't ready to get to Gold. Gold is gold. So Gold is a gold standard. It is not easy. It's not too difficult. It's the Goldilocks actually that gets the small businesses confident that they've done enough to be compliant, to be confident that if the poo hits the fan, they know how to respond and they've got coverage. One of the coverage things that I'm talking about there is cyber insurance. So cyber insurance was one of the requirements at Platinum in 2025. That's now moved down to Gold. One of the other things specifically is endpoint detection and response is now specifically called out in Gold, so EDR. And then more and more email security is added. One of the last cool things is that there's now an AI policy requirement for small businesses to have at Gold. Responsible and secure use of AI. It doesn't get too much more specific than that because it's still an evolving space for small businesses, but I would expect to see more detail added to that throughout the 2026-27 updates. So that's released on the 1st of September every year by DSI. That gives us 4 months, gives CyberCert, it gives the CyberCert partner community 4 months to prepare for certification changeover, which happens on the 1st of January every year. But here's the thing. Certification, when you hit the let's start our certification journey button in the CyberCert platform, you actually have 12 months to finish that certification. So you could claim a bronze CyberCert certification credit, and you can take 12 months before CyberCert drops the bomb and says, you've taken too long, the credit's now gone. There's a new standard, you've taken too long, you need to get the new standard. And then when you get that certification, it's valid for 12 months. So the point of emphasizing this is our partners can actually help certify small businesses in December on the 2025 version. They can take up to 12 months to get them ready to certify. And then the 2025 version is valid for 12 months from certification issuance date. So the point is, does 2026 make obsolete 2025? No, it doesn't. Not during that 1 year, excuse me, 1 year handover or transition process through that. And they say, okay, should I wait till the 1st of December to get my gold? That's up to you. I'm not going to tell you what to do. If the client needs a certification now on behalf of demonstrating cyber insurance, better policy, or supply chain, or whatever else, then you get it whenever you need to get it. Is 2026 a more modern and current standard? Of course it is. It's the latest one. Of course. Does it mean you can't do this stuff in 2026 now? No, you should do it. Does it mean you can't mix and match with Essential 8? No, you should do that too if you need to do that. So the flexibility still rests within the MSPs hand. And I say MSPs, I'm also talking about consultants. Some of our partners are not specifically MSPs, they're technical solution specialists, which are also consultants as well.
Okay. Got a question from David on what the breakdown or percentage of companies that are achieving levels 1 to 5. I think he means what percent have bronze, silver, gold, platinum.
Yeah, so above gold is less than 10%. And we expect that actually to be consistent across the globe, even as we get to 100,000, a million certifications over the years. Because there's so many of the SMBs, let's say 1.2, 1.4 across Australia and New Zealand, that are really just starting out this journey. And bronze is so accessible, it's so achievable. CyberCert's even made bronze available for $0 on the website for the first 50,000 worldwide to claim that. Just show that you've shut the front door. This is the main thing. We need to get people moving on the certification journey for their benefit, your benefit, everybody else. So the percentage then is about 30 to 40% are going to get to gold. And that's about the reflection that we have today. Definitely, we aim our technology partners to get to gold themselves, at least to have that confidence that you got instant response and readiness in that. But there's a good 30 to 50 to 60% that will be below gold. Will they ever get to gold? Maybe. Do they need to? Maybe not. Maybe silver is the destination. They get insurance and their hairdressers covered.
Okay. Well, look, that's been really interesting to just learn the fundamentals and the whys. Now that we've explored the fundamentals of that, I think it's good to understand how MSPs can use both the framework to align M365 and how M365 helps on the SMB side. And with that in mind, one of our partners recently said, all I do is delegate. So on that note, Nathan, bringing you in, we were talking about this the other day. So many of our partners have aligned their baseline on the 365 side to the Essential 8. So what's your advice there moving forwards technically with building out the baseline for SMB?
Well, the good news is that because the SMB has been created to be, I suppose, generic in its wording, it doesn't actually tell you this is how you need to configure it. It's as long as you meet this overall goal or objective for your 365 security standards. So by that very nature, if you've met E8 controls, you've met SMB1001 controls as well. For the most part, you might need to be a little bit of M2 for a couple of them, but if you've achieved that goal with a few little extra best practice policies, things like EDR, which is not part of E8, but it is part of SMB1001. So there's a few little extra policies, but for the most part, SMB1001 is fairly achievable once you've already got that Essential 8 in place.
Do you have the visual of the mapping that you've done on what's covered with SMB and in Microsoft 365?
I do. I should have had that ready to go, shouldn't I? 1 second.
And while you get that up also, I think what'll be really interesting is to get your thoughts on what's missing. The same way with the Essential 8, we built the Essential 8 Plus Enforcer best practice, where something like the Essential 8 doesn't have email security in there. Ryan said email security is coming for SMB1001. Just keen to get your thoughts on what else you would be adding to, I guess, for MSPs to build their own secret sauce around this framework.
Yeah, so I think what's missing a little bit from the SMB is things around like the user application hardening, which you might see with things in Essential 8. So some of you would be familiar with aspects around, Chrome hardening, Edge hardening. It's sort of the actual end user device application management, I think could do with a little bit like achieving adding those extra policies in there to help supplement what the SMB is trying to achieve. So here we can see is a bit of a breakdown broken into the CyberCert arrangement of bronze, silver, gold, and platinum and diamond. Absolutely, there's nothing wrong with, if you're wanting to chase the gold standard and accreditation, I would actually recommend chasing diamond from a security perspective. So deploying your 365 policies in line with what a diamond level is, because that covers more security in your 365 tenant, but you can still achieve that gold certification. So it means that if you ever want to chase that platinum or diamond controls, you've already got them in place, which is actually really helpful from that perspective of the 365. And then you can focus on the other areas in terms of process and business arrangements. But from an enforcer perspective, we have this baseline built. We've got it mapped out according to the different standards that there are. Unfortunately, I don't really have a diamond color that's in our platform that we could use. So I went with blue, apologies. But effectively, what we can cover off is things like your multi-factor authentication, patching for your devices, BitLocker encryption for removable devices for the operating system drives, Defender policies for your EDR protection. But obviously, some of these things might be covered off by other products that you're using. So even though you might not be using Microsoft Defender, you might be using something like Sophos or CrowdStrike, or who knows what product you might be using. They can still all be achieved outside of that. But in terms of Enforcer, anything that you're using in that 365 stack to help achieve your SMB certifications, we can help push that out from the 365 side and more.
And with regards to the Microsoft licensing, how can MSPs use this framework to, I guess, justify moving their partners that are reluctant to move to the higher tiers of licenses? Which ones would you recommend?
So if you're wanting to achieve SMB 1001, you're very much, even bronze standard, just from those requirements, you really need to have at a minimum your Microsoft Business Premium licensing, which would be the recommendation. You could do a business standard with some add-ons, but once you're starting to put in like an Entropy one or a Intune add-on, you're pretty much at the price of what a Business Premium license is anyway. So that business premium tier is really where you see that value in working towards achieving your bronze, silver, gold, and etc. from there.
Great. Okay, a quick question for you, Ryan, from Joel as well. We are going through the SMB path on our journey to ISO. How many extra controls are there between SMB and ISO? It's quite particular, but I don't know if you know the answer.
No, you can actually have a look on the DSI mapping page as well. It'll show you the coverage across that and then it shows you the percentage of coverage, how it's calculated in that on the DSI website. So quick answer to that though. So forget about numbers and percentages. ISO certifies the management system, not the controls that are inside them. It doesn't prescriptively say what you need to have in your statement of applicability and risk register. The ISMS's job is to determine the statement of applicability. Now, for a small business, they will generally always accept the risk. The risk appetite will be super high because their job is to make profit and grow that small business, which is the point of SMB 1001, is to say you can only get to Diamond if you've done the 36 controls and they've been independently verified. So to move towards ISO, ISO is not backwards compatible is point number one, unless you've got all of the Diamond controls in your statement of applicability and you can demonstrate that you're able to attest to the Diamond controls. But SMB 1001 has some specific details about what is required for MFA that might not be specifically called out as MFA in 27002. Does it get you ready and mature and confident to talk about risk management systems and so on? Absolutely. That's what it's used for. We've got many SMBs that are moving towards ISO, but because that can be an 18-month or 24-month journey, they've got nothing to show in between. So they get gold now, they get diamond in 6 months, and all of that is planned as part of the ISMS. And then, of course, in the 18 months' time, they're able to show that. So yes, it's a pathway. No, they're not the same. It's like having a karate black belt versus a jiu-jitsu black belt. Same idea, different arts.
Nice. Not a car-based analogy, which was nice. Nathan is going to do now a quick demo on basically how you can bring a new partner as 365 environment in line to the SMB 1001. So over to you, Nathan, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end.
Lovely. So basically what we've got, this is the tenant alignment section of Enforcer. So I'm just going to do a quick little demonstration here. So let's say we've brought this customer in, they're a new customer wanting to assess where they are in terms of SMB alignment. So what I can do is come up here to my report and I'm going to generate a new report. I'm just going to call it a SMB 1001 assessment. And what I'm going to do is an alignment by tag, and I'm going to select my SMB 1001 Diamond, which I've got here, as well as tenant settings. So just looking at overarching themes, I've got all of these different options here that I'm going to report on, and this is also brandable, so you can put your own MSP logo here, you can put your own colors, etc. So I'm just going to leave it blank. So what it's showing here is how closely aligned is this tenant to the SMB 1001 Diamond tier. So we can see that overall it's 86%. So that's pretty good. So we can see here, based on the policies that we have available in our baseline, we can see that there is 8 aligned policies and 6 that are not currently in alignment. And we can see tenant settings mostly aligned, but again, a little bit not quite in place. So we can get this nice report. We can give it to the customer to highlight it. So now the question is, how do we fix this alignment? So this is what we need to look at now. So in this tenant, I can filter by my tags. So I'm going to find my SMB diamond tag and my tenant settings tag. And what you can see here in these tags is we've got a number of policies that are suggested. So suggested policies are policies that exist in our SMB policy library, and we want to bring them into our customer. We want to make sure that these are in alignment. So what Enforcer can do here is this particular one is MFA for all admins. So here it's actually picked up that there are 2 policies already existing in our customer's tenant. So this customer has currently got some E8 policies by the look of it, but we're actually wanting to make sure that it's got that naming convention of SMB1001. So MFA for all admins, I would suggest that this policy is the one that we're most closely looking at. So what I can actually do is drop down my little arrow here and it'll show me any deviated data that's different. So this, in this instance, is purely just the name that is different between these 2 policies. So I can just select that one and I want to rename it. And then I can see that there's another one here. So MFA for all users. So here in this instance, I can also just select that one because this is trying to achieve the same goal. So I can do these bulk renames. And I know there's a policy here which is all macros disabled. Again, another rename, very similar. So you can see that the baseline description is slightly different and the name is slightly different. So what I can do is select them. I will hit bulk rename and hit confirm on that. And so what that's going to do is now rename those policies that are in our baseline to match, rename the policies in our customer tenant to match the baseline. So this means that we're going to see our little score here jump up a little bit once this refreshes in a sec. And so effectively what that means is we'll have now dealt with some policy deviations that we have. And so basically we're just working through this flow to get this customer up to 100% alignment with the SMB 1001 diamond tier. So we can see here now that these ones we've dealt with have now jumped into a deviation, and we can see some more settings that are different. So we can see that there's a difference in included roles. We can see there's a difference in the groups that are included. And so what we can now do as a second step is actually deal with any configuration change. So we've only dealt with a name change, but now for these, we will deal with any differences in terms of configuration. So we hit align, we hit next. It gives me the options on how I want to deploy it. So I want these policies enabled. I want to overwrite because there's the same name. We don't want to end up with a conflict of a policy, which is what can happen if you deploy a policy that has the same name, but you're not overriding that function. I want the groups deployed because I want to have those groups matching. So Enforcer will deploy those groups, whether they are dynamic or a assigned group. And I'm just going to leave the rest of these options as is. Hit next, hit submit. I'm going to let that refresh for a second or two. And in my other suggested policies here, I'm just going to align these ones. So we know that these are needed. I'm going to do the same steps for these and have them refresh as well.
And just as that refreshes, guys, of course, the diamond alignment does not cover the procedural controls. As an MSP, you still have to make sure that there's a supply chain process in place, there's a policy in place, there's an incident response, there's awareness training. So this is the coverage of the controls, and it is still rests with you as the MSP to check that. Okay, you can't delegate the level of responsibility into a technology platform. It's your job to make sure that the policy is actually doing what it's supposed to do, not just rely on the platform. That's the little caveat.
It is, because this is only purely looking at the 365 side of all of the policy sets. So it's making sure that they're configured, they're in place, and they're protected. And obviously, as you build out your baseline, and this is all what baseline configuration is about. So the main goal is achieving your SMB certification and protection. But this is where you have your own tenant, that you've got your policies in there, you want to build them out. You can actually start to add extra things in there. So especially things for like coming in for SMB 2026, things like Defender for Office protections, your anti-spam, anti-phishing. If you're in 25 certification territory, you would need to be adding those extra bits in manually. They're now going to be part of the 26, but also things like your Chrome hardening and your Edge hardening. And this is where you can pick and choose from different frameworks to build it up into being that baseline that you want to see, and covering off lots of different areas from that end-to-end security, especially things like if you're using Mac OS devices, if you have customers who utilize Macs, if you've got customers that need iOS and Android protections, a lot of these same controls that you might think only exclusively would apply to Windows, like Essential 8 only admits that everyone uses Windows devices, you're sort of missing out on some of those security controls. So a lot of those policies can be converted to look after and cover a lot of those other different platforms as well. And they can fully be compliant with the SMB as well, which doesn't just look at Windows devices. So I'll do that same report again. So we'll just go SMB 1001 assessment. I'll go alignment by tag. I'll pick my same tags again. Obviously, I didn't do anything with the tenant settings in this example, but we can see here now that our alignment score is 96%. We're now fully aligned with that SMB 1001 diamond tier. And all in all, what those policies to actually build, configure, each one would have taken 4 or 5 minutes to build just on their own at least. So to be able to deploy those policies that quickly, it means if you're doing an SMB 1001 project to get your customers in alignment, you can charge for your 15 or 20 hours of work to actually develop and build that policy set. But in reality, it's only taking you 15, 20 minutes of configuration, push those policies out, and then just running those reports. And you can give that customer that tangible report to show their before state and then their after state to show this is the work we've done, you're now compliant, and then you can talk to Ryan about getting that nice badge.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, mate. I think now's a good time to open things up to questions. So any questions, I guess, on the framework, Microsoft 365, please fire away in the chat. We've got, is there a specific company size range that would fit into the SMB 1001 standard? In particular, what is the upper limit, either by user count or turnover?
Yeah, it's around 200 to 300. The reason why you cannot de-scope SMB 1001 controls, okay, so it's not a risk-based decision. The risk-based decision is what level you need to get to. You can not applicable it. So of course, if there is no visitors, then you don't need the visitor register policy, right? That's the only way to get rid of it. So when you have too many seats, it actually becomes quite difficult to do that everywhere and be compliant, at which point you need to have a management system of sorts in place, which is where the NISTs and the ISOs and so on come through. Is it a turnover? The actual definition of SMB is about $100 million US as well. So that tends to be the upper limit. But could you have a 10-seat, $200 million organization? Why not? And is ISO fit for them? Maybe not. They don't have a governance committee. They don't have a compliance. Maybe they do. They've got enough money to actually build it in there and hire someone that's actually going to look after that and get some external auditors and whatever else. But the revenue per se doesn't always dictate what particular standard is required.
Okay. One for you, Nathan. How quickly after a new SMB standard is released will Enforcer support them?
So it's pretty much very much straight away. So we're planning to have the 26 standards ready for January 1st. So at the moment, the compliance is still around 25. So they'll be ready to go for January when that new standard kicks in, / a little bit before, just so it'll be ready to go. But as soon as that standard is released, we can reflect those changes.
Beautiful. Noel, I don't have the answer in terms of the PAX 8 link, but if someone has the SMB training link, please send it over. Another question. Hey, Amrutha, how does SMB 1001 accommodate organizations with different IT environments like cloud, hybrid, and on-prem? What challenges or considerations should we be aware of as an MSP when applying the framework?
Do you want to take that, Nathan? I can.
Yeah, definitely. So effectively, absolutely can still work with those. There's no, because the framework is not M365 focused, or it's not, Windows only focused, it can absolutely work with a hybrid. It can work with on-prem. The idea being, and I suppose from a management perspective, it's a lot easier when it's in 365. So if they are a hybrid or an on-prem type arrangement, it would be ideal if you can offload the end user management, so the device workloads, into Intune, which you can do if you've got that Azure Sync and some group policy settings that get changed. You can offload, even though the devices are still joined to an on-prem infrastructure, those workloads can be managed through the cloud, and that will make SMB 1001 management a lot easier than trying to do it through the old on-prem way.
Yeah, very good, thank you. And also, so it doesn't prescribe what the architecture is. It is designed to have you, as the experts, MSPs and consultants, to work out what the appropriate stack is based on the client's architecture. And usually the scale comes when you have clients that are relatively similar. So your ideal client profile will be copy and paste in a certain sense. Now, the other thing to mention is any questions that you have that you are not sure of, send them to registrar@dsi.org. That is to say, hey, we believe we've met this requirement here with X, Y, and Z. Can you just confirm that we've actually met the obligation? DSI will respond to that. That's the evidence you also want to store so that you can help the client attest and or get ready for the external audit for the 2 higher levels. registrar@dsi.org.
Beautiful. We can add that in the follow-up email as well if we remember. Doug had a question. This is probably for you, Ryan. Does DSI collate any regional specific information to show where Australia generally sit in their SMB maturity model? Do Australian companies generally just scrape in at bronze, or do they sit in the higher maturity levels?
Not yet. So there's thousands that we have in there at the moment. There's something we'll release. So CyberCert is likely to release that because it's the certification levels. DSI doesn't necessarily correlate that. The job is to develop the standard, not necessarily provide all the certification and maturity levels. But at some point, we'll have enough data across each of the regions to show the leaders and the laggers, even by sector, by size, all of that stuff. That's the information that's available through the verification registry as well.
There's also a question from Chris as well about the policies. Is there an intention to have a template library set that could be leveraged with some of the key information that can be expanded or customized for a customer's needs? Certainly within Enforcer itself, we will have that policy set and that baseline library to be able to pick and choose what you might want to do. But we're also going to have an assessment engine. So we've got our own assessment engine, which can assess based on a number of controls. And so you can actually pick and choose what parts, whether it's, your diamond, platinum, gold, silver, bronze, you'll be able to pick those checks that are labeled according to that and run your assessments on your tenants to actually see where they match up against that. And it'll be agnostic of any naming conventions or anything like that. It'll just be looking at the pure configuration. So that'll be coming soon to give you those remediation steps to fix any policy gaps that are identified, but also giving that customer information to go, you have met this particular control, and it'll be much more a granular report to showcase that. So that'll be coming very soon.
And the plan is to allow that to be run on prospects as well. So
absolutely, yes.
Nice catch. I missed that question. One from David. Do any of the levels require the uploading of evidence, i.e. data relating to the client's setup? Do you have a security privacy policy that states where this uploaded data sits and is handled?
No, so if you can imagine, CyberCert is the attestation platform, the legal non-repudiable platform that says the certification has been met, and a platinum and diamond that's only issued once an external audit is taken over the SMB with the help of their partner. There's a open text field. Can you type some sensitive stuff in there? Can you type a credit card in there? Can you type your password? Of course you can. So don't do that. Don't filter for those sorts of things. The terms and conditions are available on the CyberCert website, but ultimately what happens is the partner's role is to help the SMB get certification ready. There are GRC third-party risk management platforms, enforcers and others that have been designed to hold that sensitive information, specifically based on configuration information and evidence, we can introduce you to many of our technology partners that have integrated SMB1001 that would complement the Enforcer stack, and others to help you manage compliance journeys over and above just 365. It is not designed to be taken within the CyberCert platform. The end.
Lovely. Question from Chris. Actually, this is quite an interesting one. We would typically expect most customers to have a Google Analytics account or Google My Business alongside a 365 tenant, as an example. For SMB, the expectation will be to cover all third-party apps. Question?
To Enforcer?
Yeah, well, I probably, yeah, I would say that the idea of all frameworks really do take in everything. So it's really taking in your technology stack, no matter what it is. So if you're using 365 for part of it, you're using Google for another part of it, you really should assess all of those platforms where that data is being held or stored, in line with that, with the SMB controls. So if the requirement is for MFA, there should be MFA on any of those platforms that those users interact with.
Beautiful. Well, look, really great questions, guys. I didn't even have to consult my bank of made-up questions to keep the conversation going. So really appreciate the interaction. Just finishing up then, I guess, final thing on the SMB and Enforcer side of things. We did have a promotion that Ryan has helped us put forward. So if you do sign up with Enforcer for 30 tenants before the end of 2025, we'll fund the first year's gold certification for 20 of those partners, which would usually be about $8,000.
We can't see your screen, or is it just me? Can you see the screen?
No.
Nathan?
Can't
We
see
can
my
just see a grey screen,
just-
and
it's
you've
just
actually gone black. Yeah.
Yeah.
My computer did crash in the middle of this, so that could be that's very likely. Well, look, we'll send that in the summary, but if you are interested in that offer, just express your interest in the chat or reply to the post-event email. We'll just book a demo online. I guess finishing up, Nathan, Ryan, like just some key takeaways from each of you, starting with you, Ryan. Like, what would you hope partners take away from this webinar?
Yeah, so certification removes the subjectivity, and it predefines the list of things that you can do confidently to give to your clients that gives them an outcome. And Enforcer helps you get to gold and beyond yourself so that you can have confidence that you've met the minimum requirements as a service provider to clients who look to you for expertise. And that last point that you made there, it doesn't cost you anything for gold if you claim, of course, the gold sponsored pathways there from Enforcer. Roll it out to your tenants if it makes sense for you and you determine that it's part of your stack. And then gold, there's really the small businesses, they prefer to spend $95 for a bronze or $395 on a stake instead of on a certification. So now there's no excuse with the $0 gold pathway that you can actually give them a demonstrable outcome. So that's my summary. Thanks, Ro.
Thanks. And I suppose my takeaway summary as well would be, policy deployment of actually getting certified and deploying those policies to be compliant with gold and silver and bronze doesn't have to be as scary or as complicated as it might seem, or as hard as it can be, because using a tool like Enforcer can achieve that goal nice and quickly and easily for your clients. But then chasing that certification, E8, everyone knows it's great, but there's no easy way to actually showcase the information that you've joined it and that you're part of it. And so I think that's where CyberCert is great, to actually have that badge. You can show your customers and help them achieve that certification. So that's great. We've lost Raoul, so I might just finish up this one then. So thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And yeah, enjoy.
Thank you so much. Yes, all the details will be sent out, and reach out to any one of us for more information on how to get started, get moving, get certifying, and we'll see you inside. Thanks, Nathan. Thanks to you as well for your support in that. Amazing.
My pleasure. Thanks very much, guys. We'll see you all later.